Hello everybody, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. As you can see, I have finally cleared out this corner here, the desk and everything. So this is kind of going to be the new base of operations here for Occult Perspectives. Anything I need to play on the screen to show you guys, maybe in another video, we can reference stuff. Normally I play tones like this though. This particular one is a heart chakra healing video. Should be like one of the first ones that pop up on YouTube if you search for that. So in this video, I wanted to go ahead and cover morals and dogma again. And I think we're on part 5 actually, because I've done 4 previous videos on morals and dogma starting from the beginning of the book. So if you haven't watched those videos, you might want to go back and watch those first. And I will be starting on page, I believe, 16. And at least in my version of the book, this is a red hardback, obviously, as you saw before. What year is this? Looks like the original printing was, okay, reprinted March 1947. So this book is probably from right around then. Interesting. Before we get into the book, though, I also wanted to show you behind me. We have the lamp of Isis, and I also got Osiris for Christmas. I already have the camera pretty much arranged just the way I want it, so I'll probably show you a close-up of him in another video, maybe. I'm sure we'll probably be talking about Osiris a little bit more in this book as well. So yeah, just go back and watch parts 1 through 4 if you have not already, and we'll go ahead and start on page 16. So they start talking about the jewels of the lodge are said to be 6 in number. 3 of them are movable and 3 are immovable. The square, level, and plumb were anciently and properly called the movable jewels because they passed from one brother to another. It is a modern innovation to call them immovable because they must always be present in the lodge. Okay. The immovable jewels are the rough ashlar, the perfect ashlar, or cubical stone, or in some rituals, the double cube and the tracing board or the trestle board. Of these jewels, our brethren of the York Rite say the square includes morality. The square is a symbol of equalness. You know, its sides, it's all right angles. Its sides are all the same, so squaring off things, you know, right angles, you know, keeping it just and right. The level represents equality because the level, you know, it proves horizontal. So when you use a level when you're building, you want to make sure that, you know, it's even. So if you're living on the level, you know, you're living evenly. And there's multiple levels. There's societal levels, you know, certain rules in society and such, but then there's even higher laws, which are the divine laws. And it's really even bigger repercussions if you break the divine laws, you know, when it comes down to it. But living on the divine level would be living on that, you know, there's multiple levels, but we all live on one level, which is, you know, why it represents equality. And the plumb is vertical. And it represents rectitude of conduct, because, you know, if even our posture and stature, like when we sit up straight, the energy is actually able to move better through us. And as we go through life as trying to be good people, you know, it's keeping that upright moral sense. And that's what they're really referring to when they talk about the plumb. Sorry, my contact is just so dry today. That's why I've mentioned it in videos before, but that's why you see me take my finger and move my eye around. It's really kind of annoying. Alrighty. Our brethren of the York Rite say that there is represented in a well-governed lodge a certain point within a circle, which is actually the target logo. It's the circle with the dot in the middle. And this is actually the astrological symbol for the sun. The point represents the individual brother, and the circle, the boundary line of his conduct. As we were talking before with the symbology of the plumb. beyond which he is not to suffer his prejudices or passions to betray him. No, we should channel the energy so that, the things we're passionate about in life, feed us and move our soul, and not be prejudiced against others, just because they're different. Let's work on ourselves. That's what the whole, concept and idea behind this is. This is not to interpret the symbols of Masonry. It is said by some with a nearer approach to interpretation that the point within the circle represents God in the center of the universe. There's another meaning. It is a common Egyptian sign for the sun and Osiris. There we go. And is still used as the astronomical sign of the great luminary. In the Kabbalah, the point is Yod, which is actually a Hebrew letter, which basically looks like a dot, if I remember right. It's just like a little, squiggly. The creative energy of God irradiating with light the circular space which God, the universal light, left vacant, wherein to create the worlds by withdrawing his substance of light back on all sides from one point. That's interesting. Let me read that again. In the Kabbalah, the point is Yod, the creative energy of God, irradiating with light the circular space which God, the universal light, left vacant, wherein to create the worlds by withdrawing his substance of light back on all sides from one point. That's some really deep sacred geometry sounding stuff right there. And I also wanted to mention too, the letter Yod you use in the LVX ritual. When you're tracing the letters, it's Yod, Nun, Resh, and then another Yod. So yeah, it's important to remember the symbolisms of the letters and what their correspondences are. Our brethren add that this circle is bordered by two parallel perpendicular lines, which represent St. John the Baptist, St. John the Evangelist, and on the top rest the Holy Scriptures, the Holy Bible. When you go around this circle, they say we necessarily touch upon these two lines as well as upon the Holy Scriptures. And while a Mason keeps himself circumscribed within their precepts, it is impossible that he should materially err. That should sound pretty familiar if you're a Mason, and Albert Pike is, writing it here in this book. It would be a waste of time to comment upon this. Some writers have imagined that the parallel lines represent the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. That's another meaning of them as well, which the sun alternately touches upon at the summer and the winter solstices, Cancer being the summer solstice, Capricorn being the winter solstice. But the tropics are not perpendicular lines, and the idea is merely fanciful. So says Albert Pike, anyway. He's, him and, who's the other one? Albert Mackey. Sometimes in their views, they're a little strict. I think they're not quite. They could be a little more open-minded. But I see where they would want to be, a little more grounded in the way that they interpret some of the stuff. They're trying to demystify the occult, to a degree. Bring some rationality to it. It's all about balance at the end of the day. They probably had the same meaning as the twin columns, Jachin and Boaz. That meaning is not for the apprentice. Basically, the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy on the tree of life as well, which I've shown you the chart before. I don't think I really need to pull it out unless there's anything specific I think I could show you on that. They probably have the same meaning. Okay, I already read that. The adept may find it in the Kabbalah, the justice and mercy of God, there we go, the pillar of justice and mercy, are in equilibrium, and the result is harmony, kind of symbolized by Kether at the top of the tree of life. Because a single and perfect wisdom presides over both. A single and perfect wisdom governs them both. The Holy Scriptures are an entirely modern addition to the symbol. Like the terrestrial and celestial globes and the columns and the portico, the porch. Thus, the ancient symbol has been denaturalized by incongruous additions, like that of Isis weeping over the broken column containing the remains of Osiris at Byblos. It's just taught usually that it's just a virgin, weeping over a broken column, but it's not known by everyone that it's Isis weeping over the broken columns, which contain the remains of Osiris. I kind of forgot that myself. I remember that she kind of did represent the Isis, but sometimes I tend to forget all the different correlations and correspondences that can match these things. Masonry, I'm just going to go ahead and read through this too, because I really didn't take notes on these 2 pages. for some reason. At the start of page 18 I did, and we're on page 17 now, if you have the same version as I do. Masonry has its Decalogue, which is a law to its initiates. These are its 10 commandments. These sound, pretty much just, these commandments are, basically a way to work on yourself and make yourself better. God is the eternal, omnipotent, immutable wisdom and supreme intelligence. Thou shalt adore, revere, and love him, honor him. Thy religion shall be to do good. That's very practical and rational. To do good because it is a pleasure to thee, and not merely because it is a duty. So they're saying, don't do good just because it's a duty. Do good for the sake of doing good. That thou mayest become the friend of the wise man. Thou shalt obey his precepts. Follow the example of the wise that have come before us. Thy soul is immortal. Thou shalt do nothing to degrade it. We are infinite awareness having this experience. So anything we do that brings us down, we're basically degrading what our inherent, natural, perfect state is. Thou shalt unceasingly war against vice. Battle evil where it is. Don't just, there's a fine line between getting yourself wrapped up and involving yourself in everything and being very imperialistic about things. And then there's a difference between that and actually, if you just let evil go on unattended and you don't do anything about it, that's no good. If it's just able to be let loose and run rampant, then that's not good. We must, be that warrior, that knight that fights against evil. Thou shalt unceasingly war against vice, just read that. Thou shalt not do unto others which thou wouldst not do. Wow, which thou wouldst not wish them to do unto thee. That's like one of the golden rules. Thou shalt be submissive to thy fortunes and keep burning the light of wisdom. Basically what he's saying is live humbly. You don't really need too much. If you focus on learning about the divine, learning about God, and in essence learning about yourself and building the temple and working on yourself, this will better you, and it will also better the reality around you. Let's see. Thou shalt honor thy parents. Thou shalt pay respect and homage to the aged. Basically just respect everyone. Thou shalt instruct the young. Plant the seeds and give the seeds of wisdom and allow the young to learn so that they can take that information and run with it and grow themselves, pass on the wisdom. Thou shalt protect and defend infancy and innocence, of course, always. Thou shalt cherish thy wife and thy children. Thou shalt love your country and obey its laws. Thy friend shall be to thee a second self. So your friend is like a manifestation of yourself. Misfortune shall not estrange thee from him. Thou shalt do for his memory whatever thou wouldst do for him if he were living. So if somebody is no longer here, or if they're not around, do it as if they were there, act as if they were there. And that's kind of where the idea of the all-seeing eye comes from too. It's like act as if you were always in the presence of the divine. But then when you come to a deeper understanding of the all-seeing eye, you start to realize that you are that eye, that the eye of God. God is one with you. Let's see here. Thou shalt avoid and flee from insincere friendships. If it's not true, if it's not genuine, if it's fake, run. Thou shalt in everything refrain from excess. It's all about balance. Everything in moderation, but my one buddy, he always jokes, he's like, even moderation in moderation. So if everything's in moderation, sometimes you just have to, go a little extra. But at the end of the day, take care of yourself, do the things you need to do, and have fun and enjoy yourself when it's safe and when the time is right. There's a time and a place for everything. Thou shalt fear to be the cause of a stain on thy memory. We want to leave some kind of positive legacy, preferably one where we do as much good as we can, whether that be spreading knowledge or just doing kind deeds. Leave a good legacy. Thou shalt allow no passions to become thy master. Don't let anything rule over you, basically, essentially who you really are. And don't let anything bring your higher self down, you know. Let's see. Thou shalt make the passions of others profitable lessons to thyself. Wow, that's a really deep one. You can learn a lot from watching other people, you know, the mistakes they make. And don't judge them, you know. It's like, it's hard to know that if you were in the exact same circumstances, would you have not fallen prey to the temptations that they have? Or maybe you would have even, like, done worse, you know. You never know. So it's good not to judge. Thou shalt be indulgent to error. I think that just means just try not to err. Thou shalt hear much, thou shalt speak little, thou shalt act well. So, you know, keep quiet, hold your tongue, speak when it's appropriate. Your voice has more power when you do that, by the way. And thou shalt act well. Thou shalt forget injuries, you know, let go of the past. Let go of those who have done you wrong. Let go of, forgive yourself, you know, for doing others wrong, possibly. Thou shalt render good for evil. You know, take up the mantle of good instead of the mantle of evil. Thou shalt not misuse either thy strength or thy superiority. You know, really the person who's the best leader is really supposed to be the greatest servant. So that's kind of the paradox that you learn once you become a truly humble and great leader, is you are the one that's serving the most. Thou shalt study to know men, that thereby thou mayest learn to know thyself. Thou shalt ever seek after virtue. Study other men so that you can learn yourself better, know yourself better. Thou shalt seek after virtue. You should be just. Avoid idleness. But the great commandment of Masonry is this: a new commandment give I unto you, that ye love one another. He that saith he is in the light and hatheth his brother remaineth still in the darkness. Oh, I'm sorry. I totally misread that. I was thinking that was a little too archaic of a word. Hatheth his brother. It was hateth. He that said he is in the light and hateth his brother remaineth still in the darkness. So if he hasn't fully integrated his inner self, he's still projecting his darkness onto other people. He hates his brother. He's still in the darkness, whether he says, you know, he's in the light or whatever. Then it's, you know, baloney, basically. Okay, let me compare my notes to... Probably won't even really need to go through the notes because I'm basically just reading through this anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up chapter 1. And then on the start of the next video, whenever we do Morals and Dogma again, I will start on chapter 2, the Fellowcraft. So this video is going to finish up chapter 1, the Entered Apprentice. Yeah, it just has chapters, I believe, and each one is a different degree. Yeah, there was no prologue or anything like that. Just a little preface or preface. Okay. It is also the duty of Masonry to assist in elevating the moral and intellectual level of society, in coining knowledge, bringing ideas into circulation, and causing the mind of youth to grow, and in putting gradually by the teachings of axioms and promulgations of positive laws the human race in harmony with its destinies. So we see this common theme a lot in Masonry and other secret societies, that they've really kind of influenced the secret history of countries and the world and such. These grand ideas of like the New Atlantis, like that's, America is the New Atlantis. That's one of the long, you know, kind of kept hidden, but not really like, and what's happening is we want to take these ideas, these grand and noble concepts, which we see kind of on a microcosmic level, but we're not seeing it on like a macrocosmic level. The whole awakening process where, you know, we live in a world where we're all like genuinely studying like natural laws and studying basically the possibilities of the conscious mind, and bring back the mystery schools, bring back the music and the arts and make that more prevalent. You know, we live in a still pretty barbaric society, you know, regardless of all the technologies and things we've received. It's like our race hasn't quite evolved to the level where we use all that stuff for the best that we possibly could. So until then, the golden age, we're kind of in a golden age right now. We have so much potential. There's so many tools there to use, and I really think with the new generations that are coming in, this new Aeon of Horus, this is the time of transformation. It's happening now. This is the new Atlantis. The transformation that Albert Pike was just talking about there is coming to fruition. Excuse me for just a second. I'm going to grab some water. Throat is just getting a little bit dry here. That's a little better. Okay. To this duty and work the initiate was apprenticed. We're building the celestial temple. We're building a new temple, which isn't like a physical temple, like it's always King Solomon's temple. There were 3 or 4 different temples if you include like the astral temple. I've talked about that a little bit in the Hiram Key videos, but this is the new temple of man is really the temple within. The kingdom of heaven is within. He must not imagine that he can effect nothing, and therefore despairing become inert. That means don't believe that you don't make a difference, that you can't make a positive impact. It is in this, as in a man's daily life, many great deeds are done in the small struggles of life. There is, we are told, a determined, though unseen bravery which defends itself, foot to foot in the darkness against the fatal invasion of necessity and of baseness. There's always somebody who's working towards the light. Like, even when it seems things are down, like somebody's always somewhere. Somebody somewhere is really inspired and they're spreading light. And there, it says he's defends this bravery which is unseen oftentimes. It's done, the good work is done in the darkness, which defends itself foot to foot in the darkness against the fatal invasion of necessity and of baseness. There are noble and mysterious triumphs which no eye sees, which no renown rewards, which no flourish of trumpets salutes. So really this is like when you're working straight with source, straight with the architect, straight with God. You're doing this work for the sake of doing the work. You're not trying to impress other people. You're trying to attract the type of people who are on that similar wavelength, who want to learn this stuff, and then help them on their journey as well, so they can go and be teachers as well. And my hopes for everyone else is that you further yourself on this path even more than me. I'm really just kind of getting started still, but the Spirit has spoken to me and told me that it's time to start sharing my experiences. It's all this energy is built up inside of me, all this knowledge. It's time to share what I can, Where was I? Life, misfortune, isolation, abandonment, poverty are battlefields which have their heroes. We see this a lot in depicted in movies and stuff, and we know it happens a lot in real life, but people who, no matter where they are, if they're in a bad place, they continue to be the light for others even when they're hurting. There's a really powerful picture I saw once on Facebook. It's this person that's they're helping someone else up, but they have a bunch of arrows piercing their own back. And they're still, they're hurting, they're in pain, but they're still helping this other person up. They're still lifting them up. And somebody who can be a light in the darkness, even when they're in the darkness, that's a true hero to me. Heroes obscure, but sometimes greater than those who become illustrious. The Mason should struggle in the same manner and with the same bravery against those invasions of necessity and baseness which come to nations as well as to individual men. He should meet them too, foot to foot, even in the darkness, and protest against the national wrongs and follies, against usurpation and the first inroads of that Hydra tyranny. It's kind of like that whole idea of Hercules. He cuts the head off of the monster. There is no more sovereign eloquence than the truth and indignation. It is more difficult for a people to keep than to gain their freedom. Protests of truth are always needed. Continually the right must protest against the fact. There is in fact eternity in the right. There is eternal truth, essentially. The Mason should be the priest and soldier of that right. If his country should be robbed of her liberties, he should still not despair. The protest of the right against the fact persists forever. Right is always right. The robbery of a people never becomes prescriptive. It's not a term I'm too familiar with. Reclamation of its rights is barred by no length of time. And then he goes on to make a couple of, I think it's on this page, he makes like some historical examples. Here we go. Teutonic is Germanic tribe. It's Germanic, Teutonic order. And then Tartar is Russian-speaking Turks. And then Warsaw is Poland's capital. So remember those terms as I read this. The protest of the right against the fastest persists forever. The robbery of a people never becomes prescriptive. Reclamation of its rights is barred by no length of time. Warsaw can no more be Tartar than Venice can be Teutonic. A people may endure military usurpation, and subjugated states kneel to states and wear the yoke while under the stress of necessity. But when the necessity disappears, if the people is fit to be free, the submerged country will float to the surface and reappear, and tyranny be adjusted by history to have murdered its victims. Okay. Warsaw can no more be. So Warsaw is the Poland capital. Can no more be Tartar, Russian-speaking Turks. Then Venice can be Teutonic, Germanic. Then Venice can be like Germany. A people may endure military usurpation and subject to states, kneel to states and wear the yoke while under the stress of necessity, but when the necessity disappears, if the people is fit to be free, basically if the consciousness of the people can lift up the tyranny which has been holding them down, the submerged country will float to the surface and reappear, and tyranny be adjusted by history to have murdered its victims. Adjudged by history to have murdered its victims. Whatever occurs, we should have faith in the justice and overruling wisdom of God and hope for the future and loving kindness for those who are in error. Because this is all a manifestation of supreme source anyway. So we know that it's going to turn out all right. It's going to be okay. God makes visible to men his will in events, an obscure text written in a mysterious language. Men make their translations of it forthwith, hasty, incorrect, full of faults, omissions, and misreadings. We see so short a way along the arc of the great circle. Basically, he's talking about how we misinterpret, the Word of God so much, what the true teachings of these sacred texts really are. Few minds can comprehend the divine tongue. The most calm, profound decipher the hieroglyphic slowly. When they arrive with their text, perhaps the need is long gone on. There are already 20 different translations in the public square. Basically, this just goes on to talk about translations being, different translations, some being more accurate than others. Factions are blind men who aim straight. Errors are excellent projectiles, striking skillfully and with all the violence that springs from false reasoning, whatever a want of logic, and those who defend the right, like a defect in armor or a cuirass. I think that's how you say it. It's the part that you wear. I know that because I play Elder Scrolls, that you wear on your chest. It makes them vulnerable. Therefore it is that we shall often be discomfited in combating error before the people. This mention of Hydra having its heads cut off again. It is absurd to say that error wounded rise in pain and dies amid her worshippers. Truth conquers slowly. There is wondrous vitality in error. Truth, indeed, for the most part, shoots over the heads of the masses, or if an error is prostrated for a moment, it is up again in a moment and as vigorous as ever. It will not die when the brains are out, and the most stupid and irrational errors are the long-lived. So he's saying that basically there's going to be all this bull crap that keeps coming back up, but the justice of God, the supreme source, will manifest what is right. And really what I found is that in life, if you want to be a true magician or a witch or whatever it is, whatever path you follow, if you want to be a master of yourself, it's like walking through a maze. Like this life, this physical existence is like a maze. And you have to move your way through it and kind of ignore the things that just, walk above the water, walk on the water, keep on going, and don't get distracted by the things that try to pull you down, all the stupid things. It's really... somehow it's just an outward reflection of other things which we don't really represent, but they're still, for all things to be present, for all things to be experienced, there will be an understanding of why these things are the way they are. It's a matter of energies balancing themselves out. The fact that we live in the physical realm, so duality is inherent. Polarization is inherent in this reality. So polarization, as Frater Xavier says, is not inherently a bad thing. It's just that it's overutilized and people are over-manipulated by it. You got to have a little bit of polarity in things, otherwise we wouldn't really exist. Nevertheless, Masonry, which is morality and philosophy, must not cease to do its duty. We never know at what moment success awaits our efforts. Reward and success can be right around the corner. The greatest moment of our lives could be right around the corner. You never know. Generally, when most expected, unexpected, nor with what effect our efforts are not to be attended. Let me read that again. We never know at what moment success awaits our efforts, generally when most unexpected, nor with what effect our efforts are or not to be attended. And this is kind of the whole, Frater Xavier, he calls it set it and forget it. It's the law of least expectance. So if you want something to manifest, you really put the intention out there, and usually that would be done during ritual work, or whatever. But then you need to let it go. But at the same time, as you let it go and you work on that, whatever it is, let's say it's something, you're working towards it. You let go of the expectation, essentially. You don't lust for results. It comes sometimes when when it's least expected. You've been working on something for a long time, and then usually, like you said, when you least expect it, it pops right up. I've had these instances in my life before where just when I gave up, I'm like, oh crap, whatever, just forget about it. Bam, there it is, right in that moment. Success or fail, Masonry must not bow to error or succumb under discouragement. There were at Rome a few Carthaginian soldiers taken prisoners who refused to bow to Flaminius, which I'm assuming is probably just a evil ruler of some kind. I don't think I wrote any notes about him. And had a little of Hannibal's magnanimity. Basically, sounds like they stood up for themselves. Masons should possess an equal greatness of soul. Masonry should be an energy finding its aim and effect in the amelioration of mankind. Socrates should enter into Adam and produce Marcus Aurelius. In other words, bring forth from the man of enjoyments the man of wisdom. It's the transmutation. Just hit 33 on the time of the video. That was pretty cool. Masonry should not be a mere watchtower built upon mystery from which to gaze at ease upon the world, with no other result than to be a convenience for the curious. We're not to just sit up in the watchtowers and just be lazy and sit with all the knowledge and just build it up and build it up and build it up, because in the end it actually ends up hurting us more than it does us good, to be honest. So if we're not actually doing practices, we're not actually working on ourselves, we're not doing the exercises, we're just reading about it. Now, some things I like to, they're either above my level of my practices that I do, or they're just things that I don't really need to do. They're exercises or practices or rituals I don't need to perform, but I still like to learn about them. So it's always good to add knowledge to our library, our arcana of knowledge, or arcana, but don't just stay there. Don't just stay in that spot and be this, this guy who has all the material things and he's just comfortable living with the creature comforts, but never giving anything back ever. That won't serve us. Let's continue. To hold the cup of thought to the thirsty lips of men, To give all the true ideas of deity, to harmonize conscience and science are the province of philosophy. Morality is faith in full bloom. So just to have faith is not enough. If you act on it, that's morality. And that is faith in full bloom. Contemplation should lead to action, and in the absolute be practical. And we're talking about that idea of practicality before. The ideal be made air and food and drink to the human mind. Wisdom is a sacred communion. It is only on that condition that it ceases to be a sterile love of science and becomes the one and supreme method by which to unite humanity and arouse it to a concerted action. Then philosophy becomes religion. And I think it's funny that he says, it is only on that condition that it stops being a sterile love of science and becomes the one and supreme method by which to unite humanity. Because science does have a lot of like sterileness to it. Sterility, I guess, would be the correct word. But it's so mechanical and it's so calculative. It's just a lot of numbers, and it's showing you what it is, but it's not really, it's not the behind the veil causes. It's really just, you're studying like the effects of things. You're not really studying the primordial. You have to combine the spiritual with the science to get a full understanding. The science is the more left brain stuff, and the spiritual is the right brain stuff. But that's what makes up all of creation, is both of these things together. And if you combine them, the linearness with left brain logic with a creative right side, the transmutation takes place, as we've talked about many, many times before. This video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and try to wrap it up here real soon. Masonry, like history and philosophy, has eternal duties, eternal and at the same time simple. To oppose... and he's making some other historical reference here, which I probably didn't... No, I didn't write about any of these guys. To oppose Caiaphas, whoever that is, as bishop, Draco or Jeffries as judge, somebody as legislator, and Tiberius as emperor. They must have all been like tyrants or something. These are the symbols of the tyranny, yep, there we go, that degrades and crushes, and the corruption that defiles and infests. In the works published for the use of the craft, we are told that the three great tenets of a Mason's profession are brotherly love, relief, and truth. It is true that a brotherly affection and kindness should govern us in all of our intercourse and relationships with our brethren, and a generous and liberal philanthropy actuate us in regard to all men. To relieve the distress is a duty of the Masons, a sacred duty, not to be omitted, neglected, or coldly or inefficiently complied with. Because everyone really is a reflection of ourselves. They say that if we are the mind of God, you really are me, but you're having a different experience. You're in a different body. You're in a different... We're all at different points along the way, but we're all going on the way home. We're all part of that one divine source. To relieve okay, I read that. Also true that truth is a divine attribute and the foundation of every virtue. To be true and to seek, find, and learn the truth are the great objects of every good Mason. To see through, the veils of illusion, of Maya. As the ancients did, Masonry styles temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice, the four cardinal virtues. Those are actually the four, they call them, the Christian virtues. I think we had talked about this in a previous video. I'm almost thinking maybe it was morals and dogma, but I'm not sure. The pagan virtues are those four virtues: the temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. And then the Christian virtues are faith, hope, and charity. People that would be free and independent must possess, don't know how to say that word, forethought, foresight, and careful circumspection, which are included in the meaning of the word prudence. And we've talked about prudence before, which is looking down the line and seeing, what will work for me and what won't really end up working for me so well. And then make choices in life accordingly. It must be temperate in asserting its rights, temperate in its counsels, economical in its expenses, but be bold, brave, courageous, patient, undismayed by disasters, hopeful amidst calamities, like Rome when she sold the field at which Hannibal had his camp. See a lot of historical references he makes in these books, which I don't really understand. I think as we get into like later chapters and such, it's a lot less. It's a lot less like historical. A lot of the earlier degrees are like the literal interpretations of things in different secret societies or mystery schools, and then you learn more of the esoteric or deeper truths as you move on. So a lot of the time they use more real world examples to explain things. But this isn't always true, because in the higher degrees of like the Scottish Rite and stuff, they take other stories from the Bible. So it's a lot of historical stuff. And sometimes it's like ancient Rome and Greece that they depict. So it depends on which year, what state or what country. There's so many different versions of degrees out there, and everyone does them a little bit differently, but they're all very similar. Especially in Masonry, like the Entered Apprentice degrees going to be very much the same pretty much everywhere you go, with small deviations for the most part, especially modern day versus the older versions of the degrees. Let's see here. Must be temperate at asserting its rights. We already said that. Let her Senate sit in their seats. Okay, there's more. She must, above all things, be just, not truckling to the strong and warring on or plundering the weak. And you see this a lot in today's society. People in like positions of power, they just take advantage of it, and they just like help their friends out. Like they truckling to the strong, whatever truckling means. I'm not sure what that is. Like truck, Truckling, and then warring on or plundering the weak. She must act on the square with all nations and the feeblest tribes, always keeping her faith, honest in her legislation, upright in all her dealings. Whenever such a republic exists, it will be immortal. And in like Dante's, the Divine Comedy, he often refers to Rome as really being like the celestial empire, which is going to be on the earth and establish like the true peace or whatever, which we know now that didn't happen. So America, I believe, is really the new example of this. It's the new Atlantis. But we still have a lot of work to do. And I'm just now seeing like the awakening process really taking place. More and more people are jumping onto these grander concepts and ideas. Already said that. It will be, when such a republic exists, it will be immortal. For rashness, injustice, intemperance, and luxury, and its prosperity, and despair, and disorder, and adversity are the causes of the decay and dilapidation of nations. Okay, and that ends chapter 1, The Apprentice. And some of these chapters have like little pictures on the... I think I showed you in previous videos, but this showed the common gavel and the 24-inch gauge here, and the little apprentice picture. So that is all for today, guys. This was a pretty long video. My voice is getting pretty tired. Thank you all for watching. If you like these videos, please let me know. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications on new videos. I hope you all have a really happy new year. Hopefully I get this video posted. Well, we still have one more day. Today is New Year's Eve. So tomorrow is New Year's Eve. I should have the video posted by then. So I hope you all have a very happy new year. Wherever you are, be safe, have fun, just be smart, spread love and kindness, and enjoy yourselves. Enjoy this physical life and this existence and the fact that we're all here. It's really beautiful. Take care, everyone. Peace and blessings.